Good morning to our distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. A warm welcome to the 3rd Annual Chief Data Officer and Information Quality Asia Pacific Symposium. My name is Castro. I'm a second-year student from the Faculty of Chemistry, and I'm pleased to be your MC for today's event. Now, before we begin, we have a short safety announcement. In the event of any emergencies, please remain calm and follow the instructions of the working crew to evacuate via the nearest doors, which is located at the front and at the back of the auditorium. This year, we gather under the theme Advancing Knowledge for Data Leadership. This symposium brings together Chief Data Officers and Chief Analytics Officers and heads of data and analytics from academia, government, and various industries in hopes to tackle Asia Pacific's most critical data challenges and opportunities. Our program today is built around 2 pillars. Firstly, data strategy and management, as well as analytics and AI value creation. Today, you'll get to hear various visionary keynote speakers, engage in dynamic panels, and gain insights through thought leadership processes, case studies, and discussions on cutting-edge policies, strategies, and innovative research. We're excited to explore how data-driven value creation and innovation are shaping the future. And we are thrilled to have all of you in the audience with us today. To start off this morning's program, it's my honor to invite Professor Fong, Vice President for Lifelong Learning and Alumni Engagement, to deliver her welcome address. Prof. Bo, please.
All right, thank you. Very warm welcome to all of you for taking the time out to come to this part of the world and join us for this event. This is the CDOIQ, which represents Chief Data Officer Information Quality. This particular conference, we have run it for 3 years in a row. This is our 3rd year. For those who have been following, we actually started, the CDOIQ started in MIT in the US and have been very successfully running for, I think, about 19 years before they came to us and talked to us about starting the CDOIQ Asia Pacific Symposium. So this is where we started that tradition and brought it over from the US, and we organized our own speakers for 3 years in a row, right? So this year, we are continuing that tradition, and the reason why we wish to organize this CDOIQ Asia Pacific Symposium is really to give a chance for data leaders as well as analytics leaders to come together and to discuss important issues, right? So along that tradition, we have managed to put together a very good program this year with many exciting speakers. So again, like previously, we're bringing together 2 themes, one on data and the other one on analytics and AI. So we have in store a very exciting series of events. We're starting with a panel with several esteemed speakers. We will be talking about how we are, as CDOs, as leaders in the analytics and data domain, how you are actually coping with the rapid changes and at the same time having to deal with various trust issues as well as, I guess, compliance issues along the way. At the same time, we have also tried to identify some emerging trends. I think one key emerging trend we're all aware of is agentic AI. So we have a few speakers today that is going to shed some light on that. We're going to hear from Google, from NIME, NVIDIA, and UiPath, right? So we will also be hearing from lots of other areas of developments in AI and digital transformation, from sustainability to engineering to agri-tech, digital banking, and also credit. And at the same time, you notice that we have some booths outside. We have actually invited the Academy for Continuing and Professional and Continuing Education, PACE, to actually come and share with us on the various programs that we have. So for your information, right now I hold the role of Vice President for Lifelong Learning and Alumni Engagement. So part of our role is to actually deliver lifelong learning programs, develop and deliver lifelong learning programs. So do check out, if not for yourself, at least for your staff, right? I guess many of you are our alumni. Can I have a show of hands? How many alumni we have? All right, great. Do you guys know you have alumni credits? Yeah? You have $1,600 worth of alumni credits that you can use for our program. And how many of you have still not used your Skills Future credit? And you know $500 is expiring this year, yeah? So we do encourage you to check out our programs for yourself, for your team, because we do have a whole series of programs. NTU being a technological university, really pride ourselves in the series of digital and tech programs that we offer, right? We have everything ranging from Flexi Masters, which is credit bearing, to longer term programs, what we call SCTP, which is which is really for people who wants to basically transform themselves for perhaps a career switch or to prepare themselves to take on a bigger role, right? And we also have various shorter term programs like executive and professional certs. So do check out the programs that we have, all right? So I really hope that we can continue our tradition as in the previous CDOIQ symposiums, where we come together, learn from each other, and take the chance to also network and make new friends, all right? One more thing that I would like to announce is a book launch that we have. So we're launching a book on data strategy and AI value creation for data leaders by data leaders. In fact, this particular book is really also a culmination of the thoughts and the ideas from previous CDOIQ symposiums. In fact, after the first and the second CDOIQ symposium, we invited the speakers to contribute to this book. So I'd like to acknowledge some of our book authors here. So first of all, I would like to thank the people doing the most work, right? So Newman and Thara, yeah. So they are our co-editors for this book. Thank you for the efforts. All right, then we also have various contributors. I think 4 of our contributors are here. Can I invite them to stand up? We have Dr. Mary, Soumya, Sachin Tong, as well as Prof. Hannah Lim. Thank you very much. Other authors and contributors are not able to make it. We have Dr. Christine, Dr. Tobias, Ms. Kat, and Mr. Ram Kumar, Terry, Marcus, Felix, Alyssa, Michael, and Dr. Charlie. You can see it's a very international group of contributors, and they are now also in various parts of the world. So we have really tried to identify both academic and industry thought leaders and invited them to contribute to this book. So do we have one? Okay, all right. So we actually have a setup outside where the book publishers have actually provided some special pricing for today. So we do encourage you to check out to see whether you are interested. So basically, in terms of the topics, we look at data strategy, data quality, data security, privacy, predictive AI, generative AI, digital banking, copyright law, and the output of generative AI. All right, so the booth outside is set up for you to preview and purchase. Perhaps you might also want to purchase for your friends who might have an interest in this. All right, so before I go on to the book launch, I would like to take a moment to thank our organizing team for this conference, because without their efforts, this will not be possible. So I would like to firstly thank Newman again. Without Newman, this will not happen. Yeah? So thank you very much to Newman. And of course, Cheng Sin and the rest of the events organizing team, right? Okay, so we're going to do a little mini book launch, and I will hand it over to the MC.
Thank you, Prof, for the welcoming address. Once again, please remain on stage for the next segment. Ladies and gentlemen, as mentioned, we have come to a very special moment of today's program, the official book launch of the book titled Data Strategy and AI Value Creation for Data Leaders by Data Leaders. To join Prof. Bo on stage, it is my absolute pleasure to invite Dr. Newman Chew, Senior Lecturer from the Division of Information Technology and Operations Management, Nanyang Business School, NTU, on stage. As well as Dr. Thara Ravindran, Research Fellow from MBS NTU. All right, to help us mark this entire special moment, our authors will unveil the book poster together. Please join me, ladies and gentlemen, in counting down from 3, 2, 1. Thank you once again to all the authors. May I invite Dr. Chew and Dr. Ravindran to return to the stage. Prof. Bo, please take a seat on the stage for the next segment. As mentioned, ladies and gentlemen, as part of today's launch program, there will be a special discount for the book that will be located at the booth outside the auditorium. The booth will be available for the entire of the section, so you may proceed to the booth anytime during any of the various breaks. Now, for our panel discussion titled Impactful Data-Driven Innovations, Navigating Challenges and Achieving Results, may I invite the following panelists to join Prof. Bo on stage. In no particular order, firstly, we have Mr. Kelly Yoong, Divisional Director for Corporate Planning and Development and Chief Data Officer, Sentosa Development Corporation. Yes, thank you very much. Secondly, Ms. Barb Dossetter, Managing Director, Delivery, CXO Connect. Thank you. Finally, Ms. Tomaz, Chief Information Technology Officer, Prudential Singapore. Thank you. Now, just a gentle reminder to scan the QR code displayed on the screen if you would like to ask any questions for the Q&A session after the fireside chat. With that, Professor Bo, over to you.
Mic test. All right, good. Thank you very much for our speakers to actually take the time to share with us your insights. I must say that I really don't envy your jobs, I guess, currently. I guess with things changing so fast, you must be really having to cope with a lot of these changes. So today, we are really going to look at this topic of basically the speed and the governance paradox, right? So as CDOs and analytics officers, I'm sure one of your key roles is ensuring governance. But at the same time, we all know that that changes is happening constantly around us. The technological changes is probably already a constant that we have to deal with. And on top of that, I guess we are looking at supply chain changes, the tariff wars causing a very turbulent business environment. So I would like to ask each of you to share a little bit in terms of what do you see as some of the key challenges that you face in having to deal with this tension between the speed and the governance. Maybe we'll start with you, Kelly.
Yeah, thanks. Very good morning, everyone. So we talk about speed and governance. When ChatGPT came into prominence, probably about 2 years plus ago, I think one of the challenges is actually organizations and boardrooms asking, so what's your AI strategy, right? So particularly for Sentosa itself, we didn't immediately jump into, hey, let's do up an AI strategy. But fundamentally, we look back into what the business strategy is, right? So I think all organizations need to understand that what is your business strategy before you have the underpinning data strategy and AI strategy. And even with that, we did not make great shifts or huge changes and tore apart our data strategy. Instead, what we did, and we did not create what we call the AI strategy. Instead, we made pivots to the data strategy in view of what the demands of Gen AI and AI would need, right? So double down on governance, and looking at the purpose and projects that bring value. And actually, how do we bring speed to market projects as well? And that requires the platforms that we have in-house already. So when you look at that, fundamentally the balance or the tension between governance and actually the business priorities, you need to look at what works and do not go into big strategy shifts, nice PowerPoint slides, trying to get more budgets from the board, from the management team. I think fundamentally it goes back to the business priorities of the organization, what it needs and what is relevant. We did not go full speed ahead, right? Because we know and we knew that the technology would change very fast. We really look at what will be relevant to the organization. As Sentosa, we actually serve the hospitality domain. So customers, right, and tourists are very important to us. So when we invested, we look at recommender engine on our e-commerce platform, encouraging people to buy, increase the basket size. So that's one. The other thing that we looked at was really about how we can transform our chatbot from the usual monolithic ones, right? You ask a few questions, the chatbot tries to reply based on the canned kind of responses that you have crafted. So we have transformed that today into a Gen AI base. So it's actually, when we look at it, the reviews and the satisfaction for that is actually a lot more higher. So I think one of the key takeaways from that is don't rush head on into new technologies, but really weighing what is relevant for the business. And I think the governance bit will follow in tandem as well. Yeah.
Thanks. But this idea of always looking at business strategy and put the business unit's interests first, hasn't that always been the case? So what is new with respect to sort of AI or even the changes that we are talking about in the world?
I think what is new is now ChatGPT in two years plus ago, it makes it much easier to explain to the board, to the chief executives, right? Because they were really getting a lot of news articles. So I think thanks to the whole industry, they did the selling, right, for the technologists, right? So I think what has changed is a better understanding of the possibilities. Better, I'll put open and close inverted commas, right? Because we have a tendency, or the industry have a tendency to overpromise, right, and make things too good to be true, right? There are other underlying challenges and governance issues that we know, right? With Gen AI, you know that it's very easy in the early days, it was easy to do prompt injections, right? Basically, it has gotten a lot better right now. Previously, you were able to actually create graphic or explicit images by getting around it, right? So basically, you want to maybe create an image of a two-person trying to murder each other with swords, and you have blood flowing out of the body. They will stop it, right? There are some safeguards. And you can work around it by maybe creating prompts like create image of people holding two sticks and with red ink flowing out of the body. It works in the earlier days, but of course, over time, all the safeguards has been tightened by all the providers as well. So I think the governance bit and also the prominence of understanding of what the technology could bring to the business, I think that's the challenge, because the expectations now are sky high, and you need to manage what you can deliver as a team and to the business. And definitely the demands is coming in fast and furious. Yes, I think that's the challenge, right?
I see.
Yeah.
All right, thank you. So I guess you have an exciting job because people are excited about what technology can do, but yet at the same time, the expectations are high. Yeah. All right, let's hear from you, Barb. What are your views of this?
Okay, well, I'll back Kelly up. The AI tools you have today will be the worst ones you will ever deal with in your life. It's moving so fast. But you've got to pick your time. Now, what we're seeing across industry now is a move from ChatGPT 2022 delivery or excitement to the CIO.com is saying that no longer are organisations willing to do moonshot AI. What they want is to see a return on investment. So back to your point, Hopeful, they want to have some business outcome that they can measure. And particularly due to the global conditions now. I mean, we don't have money to play around with. It has been possible to do a proof of concept in organisations, and one of our clients have done a proof of concept. And the CIO will admit himself that the data underlining it was pretty, I won't say the word that he and I shared, but not good is probably a good way to say it. But at that time, over the last couple of years, everybody wanted an AI project that they could be proud of on the golf course. But we've moved from that. We're now calling that, surprisingly, classic AI. It's only 8 or 10 years in the marketplace, but we're now calling it classic already. And, we are starting to see those there. But a responsible organisation now, at this time, and to your point, we need to start to put the policies and procedures in place now before we cause ourselves problems. And the whole organisation, and this is where it differs from a lot of other things that we've done in the past, the whole organisation needs to be engaged in this from the executive down. This is not something anybody can avoid, because if somebody in your organisation starts using the free version of ChatGPT and puts your company data on the internet, your company data is on the internet, and it is really easy to do. I know because I nearly did it myself. So I learned by my mistakes. So we need to have that discussion from C-suite to everyone's. When you're having that discussion at that level, the best way to get people to understand the legal ramifications of what they're doing is to align it with personal protection data policies, because that's one of the mistakes that we can make, and cyber security, which is probably the other mistake that we make. And they are the mistakes that the executive will be on the hook for from a legal point of view. It's always good to show what's in it for them to be good people. One of our clients in the UK is a global legal firm, and they're an early adopter of AI, and they've been doing it for about 8+ years, and now working closely with Accenture, Oxford University and Microsoft, because they're such leaders in there. I did ask the chief data officer who leads that project, how much did it cost you, Anthony? He said millions of pounds to do it. So again, it may not be cheap depending on what you want to do, but it is important to them. So I, being me, said, so Anthony, how are you going to monetize this? And we were doing a video conference, and he grinned and he said, we have 1,000 lawyers trained in copyright law, data protection law, and we will either keep our clients out of trouble or we'll get new clients bailing them out of trouble. So if the lawyers are being trained in this, expecting problems, we need to have our internal policies, procedures in place, and constantly reminding our employees and our contractors what we're doing. Now, there are already some international standards, IS 42001, which we need to comply with, we should comply with, and that's quite important. My other role is as the Vice President of the Executive Committee of the Singapore Computer Society Supply Chain Chapter. I would advise you, if you are an IT person, become a member of the Singapore Computer Society and join the SCS AI Ethics and Special Interest Group, because a lot of the learning you're going to do is from colleagues and other people there. You are responsible for your learning. You need to get that information. You need to share that information, because the possibility of getting this wrong and causing your organisation a lot of financial heartbreak is high.
All right, thank you. Just to echo what Barb is saying, in fact, we do have a course that we are offering in conjunction with SCS, precisely on AI ethics, right?
And you know that course has actually been globally accepted as one of the leading standards. Well done, Singapore.
Yes, well done. Thank you. But But I just wanted to follow up on one point. You earlier mentioned about a frequent complaint that I think CDOs will probably hear is that the data is not good. The data is not good enough to handle, I guess, a lot of the requests that we have.
Yep.
I just wonder, is Gen AI changing some of that?
Gen AI is actually revealing this in a way. I'll give you an example. One of our clients in the UK is a company. By the way, I can't name clients. We're under non-disclosures, which is why I'm being kind of... But it's an aggregates company. Aggregates deliver rocks to places. Okay? They did an AI program of work to actually change the directions that the trucks were taking. When they looked at the data, they saw a high proportion of their trucks were going to the airport. Now, I don't know about airports, but they're mostly not places that take rocks unless they're rebuilding or repairing tarmacs. So when Mike looked at it, knowing that only 3% of their deliveries go to airports, he then started to investigate. And again, this is a lesson learned. They have SAP implemented. SAP and other ERP systems are used by people who just want to get through those activities as quickly as possible. When they looked at it, the delivery destination on that particular screen on SAP had a drop-down box. Guess what was the first word on the drop-down box? Airports. So this is why, even if your data is from SAP, it is probably not good enough. You're probably going to have to clean it up and keep it clean. And I would like to talk about that later as well. Okay.
All right, thanks, Barb. So maybe let's move to Tomaz. I think Tomaz has a very interesting role. In addition to the CIO for Prudential, he's also heading the Prudential Group AI Lab. I'd like to invite him to share a little bit more about the endeavor, because I think it really speaks to how Prudential is trying to manage this tension. Yeah.
Yes, thank you. And I think when it comes to the tension is real. I think everyone who works in the industry gets a bit of attention with their morning coffee, because every morning when you wake up, you check your professional social feeds, you see a lot of new things, and the same things, new advancements, and your board members are seeing the same, your CEO, and asking, company A is doing X, can we do the same? Of course we can, but let's now get back to our day-to-day life. You know, over the past 2 years, a lot of things changed, technology matured, but how we work inside of the big organization has not changed so much. And that's the reality. And this where the governance, but as well the other aspects come into play, creating tensions, because effectively you have two different speeds. One speed of, I would not say it wishful thinking, but aspirational and ambition, how we want to move as a big organization. Second is how we actually move, at what kind of pace. And you know, with the two objects, even if they move to the same direction, one move faster, it creates friction. It's basic of physics. So that's day-to-day reality. And when it comes to the governance, one of the solutions and part of the thinking when we were founding the AI Lab was, let's admit, we don't know everything. We effectively, most probably at this point of time, we know very little, because that's not necessarily was the very strong understanding of latest advancements or in AI. It was not part of what the organization required. That's normal. So we said, okay, if we don't know everything, before we start making big changes and revamping governance, but many other processes, let's work on this, but in the same time, let's learn. And one of the tenets of setting up and funding AI Lab was the fact that we want to learn. We want to make sure that, one, we harness and maybe let me give you first a bit of a background, what is AI Lab? And because the AI Lab is effectively a corporate incubator and corporate accelerator that we running globally, focus 100% on AI use cases. both what we call traditional AI, but as well as Gen AI. Because there's a plentiful opportunities everywhere, so it's not only always chasing the shiny new objects, but building the muscle and understanding, starting from talent, and if you look across the industry, one of the key differentiators for leaders is the fact that they have experience. They have done through a cycles of trying and doing things. Everyone is smart after reading a presentation or even a research paper, but when you try to apply it, this is where actually learning come to play, and you can harness it and reflect and adapt the ecosystem to make sure you maximize the value delivered. So was talent. Second was, we believe that there's a lot of, and through the inspiring people, the enablement is quite critical. And enablement, in order to harness the knowledge, the IP, and great ideas that people have across our 22 markets globally. But often what happens inside the corporate environment is there might not be necessarily the right way to enable people, give them opportunity to translate the ideas into action and into even effectively later on AI products. So another tenet of the lab is to provide this standardized set of capabilities from sandboxes to the data to the environments and enable them with having a very simple value proposition. Bring you best ideas. Your IP, knowledge of the business, will help you to translate this into value. So you remove the obstacles. Even if you are working in remote parts of Africa, you have an amazing insight what your customer needs. We allow you to do this. So really driving the bottoms up innovation and enabling it. And then naturally, last but not least, is really bringing this perspective and insights, what's happening in the market. How does it translate? Is it important or not? Because given the tension, all the things that are happening, and I'll be honest, I'm a practitioner, both in the corporate side, but as well as doing some academic research in the space. I cannot keep pace. I can't. I literally can't keep pace with what is. That should be. It would be a full-time job, even more, if you just want to be up to date with everything that is happening. It's just not possible. So, but having this ability to provide a perspective, because it's all about the perspective. What is important, what is not important. Because in many organizations today, there's many organizations have identified AI as potential risk for the business model, for the markets, and for the operation. Having this and provide opinion and perspective, injecting this, it's important. But through all those steps, then we can start thinking, okay, how we should approach governance. Because governance is there for purpose. Sometimes it's question how you can apply it in the smartest possible way. In the end, it's you need to go through the certain steps to make sure that you don't create more risk, you don't put potentially the company out of the business, you don't create issues for the customers, but as well as understand, provide a clear guidance, because when we try to venture into new spaces, one of the biggest hindrances is lack of clarity. Because if people are not clear, people take a step back and say, I don't know how to navigate this space. So the governance, you can see it as especially when you talk about the guardrails, it's like a boundaries along the road. So you know at least if you follow, you get to the destination. But instead of, okay, it's an open field, open plane, whichever direction you go, you don't know if you end towards your destination. So we see, and together with the knowledge, start adapting the governance towards the best possible outcome.
Thanks. It's really interesting. I just want to understand, for this AI lab, is it largely, I guess, projects that are proposed by internal staff. And so if it's that case, I was just wondering, first of all, how do you motivate the staff? Because I can imagine I'll be thinking, oh, this is an interesting project to work on, but is it going to be additional work for me on top of everything else that I want to do, right? So how do you motivate the staff? And secondly, how do you decide, which ones of these projects should I actually invest in?
So, as this is an incubator, and we follow incubation process, so it's a stage-gated process where we collect first the bottoms-up ideas. And each cohort, we receive hundreds of submissions. So I think there's not necessarily a problem to get ideas because people get excited. Because let's be honest, that's part of the value proposition for us is we know we have amazing people with great ideas, but we want to give them an avenue to turn them into reality and experiment as part of the job. So I think it's a great value proposition, especially for people that are curious, they would like to do something. And how we are doing we have a quite well-established, once again, stage-gate process to identify the highest value, and the value is, I'm using it in a very broad sense, initiatives. But that's not only way how we drive AI at the company, because naturally we have as well lighthouse projects that are more strategic, centrally driven. So it's top-down centrally, but as well as bottom-up. And it's all about coming together to address the biggest company challenges. But one of the North Stars in terms of the value creation is really the impact that we deliver. And we have pre-identified set of focus areas and what does it mean the project is good for taking to the next stage. And the stage of identification, validation, building MVP, and then actually piloting one of our businesses in production before it can be scaled and to the group-wide, as a group-wide solution.
Okay, thanks. What Tomaz said and what other panelists said really resonated a lot with me. In fact, I just came from a conference yesterday in China where we were discussing about digital education, right? And I did a presentation on how NTU sort of applies AI for education. And you can imagine we are a sector which is really highly impacted by AI, right? Our students are using it, and of course our instructors are similarly finding AI useful in our day-to-day work. So I think one of the key things I was also speaking about, which I think has some elements of what everybody says, is that there's 3 key pillars that we look at. One is policy. I think as what Tomaz was saying, it's important for us, and also Barb was also saying, right? It's important for us to set policies and guidelines. And I can imagine it can be difficult to be chasing the innovation, but it's important for us to state what, at least at a high level, what are some principles that we adhere to. So for us, we adhere to the principles of transparency in the case of education. Students have to declare if they use AI in their work, and similarly, instructors should declare if they are using AI. And also we have developers of AI tools, and we similarly ask them to actually factor in various considerations in terms of ROI, as well as various, ethical requirements that they're supposed to meet. So I guess that's the first pillar, policy. The second pillar that we have is a platform. And the platform is, I think, 2 things. One is people. And very similar to Prudential, we also have communities of practice where we bring together key experts in the universities, which are usually instructors who are trying to experiment and do their work. And we actually bring these communities of practice together. And at the same time, we also have a platform, which we have actually 2 platforms in NTU, which allows instructors to share and to actually use AI in a sandboxed environment. And I think our last, perhaps is another question we're going to explore, is in terms of measures. So we are also measuring what are effects of some of these tools that we are using. So I think this sort of brings together a lot of what you're saying, right? It's the balance between having policy to guide, at the same time having a community of practice to experiment, and also tools to support. And of course, at the same time, constantly measuring what works and what doesn't work. Yeah. So this brings me to the next question. I think Barb mentioned about ROI. So I wanted to understand a little bit about how do you define success? And also, how do you demonstrate ROI for innovations? I mean, you can imagine ROI can be defined in so many different ways, right? Monetary is not the only way. So what are some guidelines you would actually suggest that we can think about in terms of how you define such ROI? Maybe we'll start with you, Tomaz.
That's the ROI is always the most interesting conversation, because if you want to, and it's very interesting conversation when you talk about building capabilities and foundational capabilities, because that's basically ever-going effort. And when you talk to your financial colleagues from the finance department, they don't like necessarily that something is never ending. So it's so being able to articulate this in an acute manner, and many times it's about optionality. And you can imagine this building financial capability sometimes that provide options. Financial folks are much more acute to understand what is option, and that actually you can put a price on the option. And to bring it closer maybe to those people that are not familiar with the concept, it's like buying a flight ticket. You have two tiers. One is fixed date, another is fully flexible. You can reschedule as and where you want, or you can get a refund. Naturally, the second option is much more expensive, but because and the difference is the cost of the option that you can put on it. So bringing some of the conversations from the foundational, but as well as bringing much closer to home and maybe something to echo what Kelly mentioned is linking back what we want to achieve as a company. Okay, how it can help us. And in early stages, a lot of conversations are about cost, because cost is very easy to measure and it's immediate. But through the education is, because in many cases the capabilities and new use cases, they allow to do things much faster. And so it's about growth actually, because the fact that you're doing something cheaper is not necessarily going to drive the growth. And in many parts of the business, the growth is the priority. So how we can actually do things much faster and drive the growth. Having this conversation, be clear what is important. Because if you go to if you work on the use cases that in a business line or business unit where it's all about the growth, and so cost saving might not be the priority on the agenda. So it's making sure it's very well aligned what you're trying to achieve. And when it comes to measurement of ROI, what we did is we established a framework. What does it mean? To standardize, because especially in areas of, let's say, data products, AI products, there are different ways how to measure and quantify it. So having a standardized way, say, okay, we'll deliver annualized over what period, what is the quantum, what is the measurement, in order to as well to compare a stack rank. It helps the conversation, because otherwise people get confused, and sometimes it might erode the trust if you say, okay, one person say it's X amount, another Y for the same use case, just because it's not about because it's the standardization is not there. So it's important to facilitate the conversation across. It helps to provide transparency, but as well as drive the conversation forward when it comes to the benefits and impact delivered.
All right, great. Yeah, having a common mental model is always good, yeah? Barb?
I would take it slightly differently, but I don't disagree with you. I think having measurements in place are very good as well. We really need to start with the C-suite. We really need to start with the business objectives over the shorter period of time. And I would say mostly 3 to 5 years. because I don't think we can predict more than that. It's very important because everything we do should harken back to the objectives of the organisation. So there should be a clear line of sight. Not all of the objectives of an organisation are measurable in money, as you would agree. They are measurable sometimes in increased customer breadth, entering new companies. But one of the things that we quite often don't do is the cost of not doing this thing that we're looking at. What are our competitors doing? What are the disruptors? And for a long time in the banking industry, they did not recognise the disruption from fintech. They do now. So it is important to also understand what you're not doing. It is important that the C-suite, the executive, have an executive sponsor for these things, not to the detailed levels of the individual elements, but the general direction, and that they also know, because they have been part of this retraining, that they need to know what questions to ask and how to assess the answers and to know when they need to push more. So it's really quite important that the executive understand both the current situation of AI and the potential that AI can bring, so they can challenge the organisation. One of our clients has got a very interesting approach, which I actually think is a really good idea. So I share it with this group. And they have appointed an executive sponsor for data and AI, for the two things together. That executive sponsor sits at the executive suite. He is a C-suite person. He is not the CDO. His role is to clean the area out in front of the CDO. He is the person that may have to do the finger pointing and wagging when different parts of the organisation don't play nicely with each other. But I'm sure in both organisations here, you all play nicely with each other across the silos, don't you? Nod. Yeah, so you need the executive sponsor that actually bangs their heads together when necessary. So I would also recommend that. The business case or the reason for doing the particular thing that you're doing may not be measurable in financial terms. It may be measurable in the terms of, quite frankly, giving yourself competitive advantage over the person in the same industry that's doing it. Because there will be organisations that will adopt AI and use it fairly extensively, and there will be the ones that don't, and there will be a real difference over the next very short period of time of the measurement that we quite often do is total shareholder return from the two different organisations. I'm not sure I've answered your question, but...
So lots of things to consider, yeah?
Yeah.
Maybe Kelly can sort of give us some examples in your...
Just add on, I think I have a bit of benefit in my role. Aside from the CDO role, I actually take care of corporate strategy and planning, right? So it's a bit of advantage. I don't sit in the traditional technology or IT unit. The reason for that is I'm very closely in tune with the strategy and the business strategy of the organization. And it's quite easy to identify what are the opportunities, right, where you can actually make improvements or you can be an enabler to the organization priorities. So I think Tomaz mentioned about the hard numbers, the financial metrics, the cost-benefit analysis as well. Barbara mentioned about the counterfactual. What if you don't have this project? What does it mean for the organization? For me, I would think that take a view of the mid to short and to long-term view. Some of the investments, if they're aligned with the strategy, are really investments because you don't see the benefits and the returns until a couple of years later, right? The other thing I would also kind of encourage the practitioners out there is actually look at the employee, right? Because we focus on the financials, we focus on the counterfactual, how are you investing in people? I think that's very important. When we actually laid out some of the tools available out there, without training, right? We observe and look at the uptake. And it's also quite interesting in how they have used some of these tools. I mean, in the government, there are tools out there that allows our employees to actually use Gen AI. So we look at the archetypes of the prompts they're actually sending out to those platforms. You can also kind of elicit what are the challenges they are facing, what's bugging them on a day-to-day basis, right? So that's one aspect of how to elicit potential measurements of what are the problems and what's the benefits of you trying to actually attack at a problem. So investing in training and the kind of problems they are facing and the work they are doing, I think that's one important aspect that you need to look at. How can you improve the scalability and cross-deployment of your employees across the organization? The other aspect of just looking at pure man-hour savings, right? When you do man-hour savings, I think the key consideration, and that has always been discussed at the leadership level, is actually how can we morph the job description or the job role of the particular person. It's one thing to really solve productivity. You end up with additional hours, but how can you morph the job role and the work they are doing into higher value contributions to the organization? I think that's an important consideration, because many a times we say, hey, there's X hours of man-hour savings, but what do you do with those man-hour savings? I think that really matters, right, from an organization standpoint. I hope I've given more context and layer on some of the potential metrics that you can consider in measuring efficacy of your projects in AI.
Thank you very much. I think to me there's some key takeaways, right? So I hear also there's some weaving together with some of the earlier messages we heard, right? I do hear that IT or data leaders don't work alone, right? You actually depend on the employees, and that needs to be alignment with strategy. And this is where it goes back to what Tomaz was saying, the very bottoms-up approach, right? Because the people in the business unit probably knows best how to leverage the technologies. And I think, Kelly, you make a very good point in terms of training. And I guess related to what I would say is AI literacy, right? So ensure that if your business people know the capabilities of AI and they are able to grasp what kind of projects that they can actually propose AI to do, then it becomes naturally very aligned with what the business units want to do. And this will be one very good way to drive the AI strategy for the firm. And so a little bit of an advertisement, right? So this is where we have a lot of programs in NTU that is providing this AI literacy, right? When we talk about AI literacy, I'm very aligned with the panel here. It's not just AI for the tech professionals. It's also AI for the non-tech professionals. And we similarly have many programs that we are using to actually train people in their career transitions and who want to actually embrace the AI much more. In fact, we even have a master's program on applied AI that is targeted at non-tech professionals. So I do see there's more and more interest, and it's very aligned with what the panel is saying in terms of what is needed to drive the AI strategy for the firm, right? So I'm going to ask one last question, and then I'm going to open up to the floor, all right? So as I ask this last question, please think about what you want to ask. So in the last question, I would like to invite all our panelists to share a failed project, right? So we always hear about successful projects. So I would like you to share a little bit about a failed project and what were some of the key learnings that you have from such a failed project. Maybe, Barb, would you like to start?
Well, firstly, what I'd like to say is that we don't have project failures. We really do need to remove that terminology. These are learning opportunities because we are going to continue to improve. So these are endeavours. They are long-time activities with milestones. And we don't know when we start on these just how much it's going to cost. So setting a budget for a project in AI is quite difficult. Setting a budget actually for any project is quite difficult. So if we're going to get the true benefit from the technology tool and the technology activity that we're doing, let's call it an endeavour and let's call it learning, and that will be really good. One of the project's failures that I've already mentioned, and that was the one with the aggregates company, and that was down to data. Yeah, the data was wrong, just straight wrong. So what they are doing now is they're coming back and they're cleaning up the data. That then takes them into a second activity, which is getting the business to take responsibility for the data. Now, any of you in IT probably have heard the activity from our business colleagues when we question whether the data is correct or not. But you can fix that, can't you? No, we can't. We don't own the data. We don't know the data. We have to get our business colleagues to fix the data. So that is where the likely biggest learning is going to come, is to make sure that we have data that is even good enough to get us started. Our first iteration with a model is probably going to give us, if we're lucky, about 50 or 60% of what we should expect. I mean, I think that's probably what you found in the incubator as well. As you learn more, then you can re-educate the model with better data. As you get to work with your business colleagues, if you're an IT person, you can get them to learn how to actually own their data. But the data is probably one of the biggest risks to seeing a successful milestone in this lifelong project. Aggregates is one example.
Okay, very good. We need to have good data, yes.
Good data.
Tomaz?
Maybe I'll share one of the projects that started as unsuccessful, but we managed to turn it around. It was more of a more traditional ML approach, applying ability to predict certain behaviors or certain propensities. So I can't share necessarily the details. And it started with very good insight from the team that was looking at the data. Okay, there is a clear, very strong correlation. There's a causality, and its backtesting resulted. Yeah, actually it works great. Why don't we roll it out to our employees to use it as a guiding principle to guide their decisions? But unfortunately, because it was driven more from the back to front, what was skipped is actually engaging and doing user research, talking to the end user. What is the problem? How they use the solution and the tool? So effectively, when we have rolled out the solution, the people did not necessarily want to use it because they said, and we are all professionals. We are proud what we are doing, and we are good at what we are doing. So naturally, if someone going to come and tell you, actually you can do it better, people by definition, the black box will tell you that you can do something better. By definition, people are resistant and will not necessarily trust it and want to use it. So having the ability, and the solution was presented as, okay, you are doing X, Y, Z, now you can focus on A, B, and C because this will give you higher returns or higher level of results. So only after then, people did not want to use it because they didn't trust it. Because we don't want the machine black box to tell us what to do. That we knows better than people that have been doing this for, let's say, 20 years. So only after going back, seeing how to combine this approach, the insight, the data, wrap it in a way that is palatable for the user to understand and trust it. Apply more of a UX layer on top of it. Actually, people started to use it because they started to trust in it. And we saw a huge uptick in adoption and actually translated to results. Because let's remember, the people using the solutions are the multiplier. If there's a 0, multiply by 0 is 0. So it's really about driving the multiplier and making sure people are trusting and are using it to drive the results and impact.
Thank you, Thomas. This is a very good reminder for even data scientists and data leaders, right? That the user engagement is a very critical aspect. Yeah, Kelly.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that. Sentosa is a public agency, right? And you know, public sector government officials can't fail, right?
So the government never has failed projects.
I wanted to go back to what Thomas has said. I think when you look at failures or you look at projects not gaining tractions, right? I think one of the key things that you need to remind yourself and go back to looking at the people, right? When you look at the culture of your organization, it's quite easy to break down, and I think the archetypes would exist in any organizations. You have the promoters, right, that will be definitely on the forefront, supportive of what you're doing. There will be the archetypes that is sitting on the fence, looking at whether you're going to fail or whether you're getting good traction and they want to be part of the bandwagon. Then there will be a section of the people that is your naysayers, right? Naysayers because they're very comfortable in the way they are doing the things. What you're suggesting to them could take away the job, right? And like it or not, any organization would have this segment of people that is a little bit more risk-averse. They are more resistant to change, right? And when you look at the projects that you're pitching, the project that you're working on, look at the mix of your business users. Sponsor is one, right? You could have a very supportive sponsor, but the people executing the project team, look at the mix of the people and select the right end users or even the right business problem to solve, right, at the business units itself. Because the mix of the segments of people you have could make or break your project, right? I think that's very important. Understanding the culture and the archetypes of the project team is definitely a recipe for, one of the recipes for success. I would strongly encourage any practitioner out there to really look at how you example the team, understand the dynamics of the team as well. Earlier on, we mentioned about governance as guardrails driving on the road. I would say that the people and the culture of the organization is the engine, right? That if you're driving a car, that will bring you how far you can go and how fast you can go as well, right? So I would really want to really explore or encourage people to look at this, because this is often an element that is sometimes not within your control or sometimes overlooked of how you attack at various business problems. Because I've come across I've been in many different organizations, private and public. You have the best use case, best financials, but you have somebody that is very resistant, right, to ensure that this project go ahead or is successful, and that is a big roadblock. Instead, you might want to look at the middle tier projects that may not bring you as much ROI from the onset, but I think if goes smoothly, it can bring you the mind share and what are the possibilities that you can actually achieve with AI. So I think that's really an important component to consider, yeah, in whether the project fail or succeed. Yeah, thanks.
Okay. So I guess what you're really saying is you can avoid these failures by picking the right projects, picking the right target segments to start with, right? And that's why the government never has failed projects, right? All right, okay. So on that note, maybe let's see whether there are any questions from the audience. I know people are saying 40 characters and 40 words are too short. So we'll let you have the floor, right? So who would like to start? Who finds this too confining? Yes.
I'd like to ask the participants, AI as a disruption is very new, as you mentioned, they are handling this, responding to your board member, what is required, what are the possibilities you can do in organization. So I'd like you to share one project, or maybe a pilot project, a before and after, the results in metrics, and that would convince your board or your stakeholders that this is the right path to go.
I can share. So when we look at AI projects, I mean, I spoke about the e-commerce. The recommender engine that we built is very tangible because we saw n-fold increase. I can't share the exact numbers, the n-fold increase in the click-throughs and also the conversion rates as well on the commerce platform. So it has a direct attribution in the increased revenue coming through our digital platform. So that was a ROI that we made realize. When we actually started the project, we set an ROI, we set a measurement of success, but in fact the performance of the recommender engine actually far exceeds what we've expected. So that gave us kind of a good push to actually invest a little bit more in how we actually try to increase the basket size through our digital platform. So that's one on the forward-looking and the outward-looking portion of the business. Internally, when we look at some of the productivity use cases, one of them we recently did was really about onboarding to a new HR system, right? So as part of that, there's a lot of change management that's required. So what we did was we built a GenAI bot, right, to actually help the employees to onboard, to ask questions. So within 1 or 2 months of the launch, we saw about more than 650 queries being sent to the bot. Can you imagine that would be cost avoidance of 650 emails or calls to the support team, right? That will be handling the requests. And if it add on a number of hours or rather minutes, right, that you need to actually respond to those queries, there's also manpower savings as well. So I thought this is some of the examples of the projects actually in Sentosa of how we have actually realized some of this value. But of course, at the board level, there is always the counterbalance. You have your sub-boards, your ACs, right, your audit committee as well. And they always keep us on our toes to make sure that we have the right governance in place to make sure that whatever we do is ethical. It doesn't run afoul of the reputational risks of the organization, especially for your higher risk projects. There's outward facing, there's customer facing. I spoke about the chatbot that we recently launched as well. We did a lot of testing on that, rigorous testing on that as well, because it's outward facing. You don't want it to communicate wrong policies, for example, or wrong information to the guests as well. I think the repetition risk is very real, and that's a really consideration you need to have when you're looking at the higher risk projects out there. Again, I would say the governance is really a very important aspect of how you manage imbalance of the returns of certain projects that you can actually communicate outwards to the board, right? And also to manage probably your sub-board, your audit committees as well. Yeah, I think it's a balance of both. Yeah, so that's an example. Yeah, Barbara?
I'd like to share 2 examples, but they're different kinds of examples in there. Firstly, the island of Mauritius has a group put together by the government to digitise Mauritius government services. The island of Mauritius has no money, even less now because they have a high tariff. However, what they've done is taken a very holistic approach, and they've picked up various parts of where the citizen deals with the government. On a function by function, they have added AI into that function in a way to help the citizen use that function easier. And they've recognised some increased happiness with the citizens because it's easier to use the function, plus it has saved the citizens time. So that's one example. The second example is the law practice that I'd quoted earlier. They have been doing AI for about 9 years, so they were an extremely early adopter. The first objective of that was to put all of their legal activity into a searchable database that allowed them to do the briefs easier for their client base, and that was their first iteration of it. That was quite successful. They achieved that. That would have been saving, but I couldn't tell you how much. They probably haven't that. The second iteration of that was training all of the lawyers, because that was revenue generating, and that was a very big pleasure there. So again, what you're seeing this, and this is why I keep saying it's an endeavour, it is a continuous process of business change, organisation change. The third one, which is the one they're in now, is that they actually have a consulting practice, which is now attached to the law practice to help people do exactly this. So again, it's not quite measurable in the way of a project, but it's a constantly changing and improving business change, which has taken them into a completely different direction.
I'll just maybe share two simple examples. Naturally, when you're at the start of the journey, make your life easier.
Yeah.
Pick the projects that you know there's a high level of success, and they're not too difficult. Because at the beginning of the journey, it's all about building credibility and confidence in the stakeholders. Your credibility that you can execute, and confidence of the stakeholders that will be supporting you on the journey. So it might not be the sexiest, but something that's going to turn a success, something very straightforward. Unless your organization is really in a burning platform situation, then you can be a bit more bold, because this is what the strategy requires to make it much more bolder decisions. The second is, when it comes to the stakeholders, and it's one of the examples, so especially coming board and other formal committees interactions. So what we did is, quite early in the process, we tried to pitch the idea that actually AI can be your thought partner. And using, of course, internal whitelisted tools, vetted tools, how the different stakeholders can prepare for board meetings by simulating a difficult board, maybe not stakeholders. That's not difficult in a sense, but asking difficult questions to the material that is presented. This is a great example how to build people confidence and reposition pivot as a thought partner that brings people along a journey. So those are simple examples how you can start the journey, build the confidence, and scale moving forward.
All right, thank you very much. I think this is largely, again, an ROI question, right? I now run a business unit, so from a business unit's perspective, we have also tried to work with our IT department in terms of some of these AI projects. And I must say one thing that is very useful for us is if eventually we have to decide whether we want to invest in this, in this sort of AI project, it was very useful when the CITS team, the IT team, actually provided seed funding. And they said that they can actually provide some seed funding to do the initial work, so that we can use that as sort of a proof of concept to check whether, does it work, and to what extent it works, and what is the exact numbers that we are going to talk about before we sort of do that investment. So I think from a user department's perspective, it is always useful if there is some sort of seed funding that is provided by, I guess, the organization to do some of the experiments that we are talking about. Because sometimes it's very hard to forecast what the exact numbers look like, right? All right, so on that note, and in view of the limited time, I think we need to close the session here, right? I'd like to really thank our panelists. I think I learned a lot in terms of how to balance the need for speed and governance, all right? So thank you very much. Let's give a round of applause to our panelists.
Thank you once again to our panelists for sharing your valuable insights. Can I invite all of you to the front for a group photo? Thank you, panelists. Please return to your seats. Ladies and gentlemen, we have come to the end of the first segment of this morning's program. Before we continue with the symposium, we would like to invite all of you to head out to the event square for your morning tea break. The next segment will commence at 11 a.m. sharp, so please be back on time. Before you leave, please kindly remember to take your belongings with you and dispose of any litter responsibly. Thank you, and we'll see all of you after the break at 11 a.m. For our next sharing session, may I invite Prof. John Dong, Associate Professor from the Division of Information Technology and Operations Management, NBS NTU, up on stage for his talk titled Digital Transformation for Sustainability, Challenges and Opportunities. Prof. Dong, please.
Thank you. Good afternoon. So I know it's already 12 noon, so everyone is hungry, including myself. I will try to be quick. I chose a slightly different topic today. It's about digital transformation for sustainability. Why? When I thought of a topic to present today, I know there will be a lot of AI experts coming. So I try to avoid talking about AI. I think it's a wise strategy to enhance my differentiation. But also because of my personal experience. Before moving to Singapore, I worked in Europe for 10 years. The biggest lesson I learned from the Europeans is their deep concern on sustainability issues. Of course, sustainability is also a big thing. It's one of the most important pillars we have in MBS, in our research, education, and also the entire NTU. So the more research and teaching that I've been doing in recent years, covering both topics, digital transformation and sustainability, I start realizing that these two topics are not independent. They are actually highly intertwined. I do find if you do one thing, it can perhaps help you to pursue the other, rather than think of these two things separately. So I thought perhaps I can share some of my thoughts by taking this great opportunity to just encourage more digital transformation journey, which will be toward the direction of sustainability. So I would like to start with a quick survey. I often do this, in my MBA class, workshops. How many of you are thinking that pursuing sustainability is a cost of your company? Let's just be honest, it's not right or wrong. If you think of it as a cost of your company, raise your hand. Okay, we see several. I mean, usually you will find, more yes kind of answers to the question. You do see in practice a lot of business leaders, they do think of sustainability will increase your cost. They are no wrong. So if you make any investment into sustainability, whatever you're doing, reduce your emission or try to launch more fancy technologies, it will actually rise your cost accounts in financial statements, right? But if you think of this, it may be fundamentally conflicting with the nature or the managerial objective as a company, right? By definition, you're a profit-seeking organization. Why should I raise my cost? In a sense that lower my profit by doing that, right? Eventually, your profit will be determined based on your revenue from the market minus the cost that you spent. So it doesn't make much sense if you think of pursuing sustainability as a cost. And if you further think of this and ask people, do you want to be sustainable? I think today the answer will be yes. Rarely you'll say, I don't want to be sustainable, right? You are expected to be sustainable. But the key challenge, the biggest hurdle in practice, from my observation, is no one wants to pay. So if you think of this as a cost, why should I increase my cost, right? So why do I have to do this given I'm a profit-seeking organization? So this is the key question I keep facing from the questions that my students raised and also from our research. In order to solve these problems, in my opinion, we do need to think of this question a bit differently. So can we be sustainable and also profitable? So in a sense that we will have to find a way to balance these two seemingly conflicting things, right? So that reminds me of this I saw it in Europe. So this is a picture about Janus, who is the Roman god, looking after two different things: beginnings and endings. Okay, so if you look at the picture, he has two faces, in opposite directions. And actually, the first month of the year, January, came from his name, because he's a kind of the god of the time, and he has special ability to look after both the beginnings and the endings throughout the process. So this was the original idea that we learned from Roman legend in terms of so-called ambidexterity. So we do one thing to serve for two different purposes. And what does it mean by ambidexterity? Simply speaking, it's one stone, two birds, right? So you want to do one thing, serving for two conflicting purposes. And we discuss a lot organizational ambidexterity actually in business research. Exploration versus exploitation, radical versus incremental innovation. We got to be balanced, though we have two different things. Okay? How can we achieve that? It's easier said than done. But I think the first step of your journey will be starting from thinking of sustainability, not just as a cost. To some extent, I agree with you. It's a kind of cost in your financial statement. But can we also look for opportunities when pursuing sustainability to make a competitive advantage by pursuing any sustainability initiatives, to make our competitive advantage a bit sustainable? In one aspect, you want it last for a long time. That's what we mean by sustainable competitiveness. But on the other hand, if it's related to sustainability, it has a second meaning of sustainable competitive advantage. How can we do that, right? So if you think of, what we are doing in digital transformation, we're trying to apply new technologies. By no means there is guarantee we can bring up our profitability, but some companies can do that. So if you think of the role of digital technology in and how it has the relation with sustainability, I often try to refer to this quote from Mr. Gupta, who was the former CEO of DBS Bank. So he led a big digital transformation in DBS Bank. I will revisit this example very soon. But if you look at what he said, if you want to create a low carbon intensive world, everything we have created in the last 150 years is going to be reimagined. So the energy system, the built environment system, the agriculture system, the marine system, every system has got to be rethought. And it has to be rethought with technology. So the biggest change we are experiencing now is to apply new technology, whether it's AI or other technology. I will use another technology as my example. It's also related to data. Okay, but it's less about how you process data, make decisions, more about storage, which is blockchain. I talk more about that very soon. But what I'm trying to say is, if you look at what companies like DBS Bank are doing, so they're trying to pursue their digital transformation journey by creating a unique opportunity to create competitive advantage with some consideration of sustainabilities. They may try to create a cost leadership by doing that, although as what I said, if from the very beginning you think your investment in sustainability is a cost, you may not have a good way out. But in the long run, it's possible, right? A lot of companies, they may benefit from cutting the energy cost to receive a cheaper bill. A lot of them may actually get carbon credits for tax benefits. And more importantly, a lot of companies try to simplify their business processes, operations, in order to pursue a cost leadership. And that actually saves you a lot of labor time, and it allows you to be more flexible, and you can respond to market changes, faster. So speed, right, as what has been mentioned, could be a source of your competitive advantage. But more importantly, what I observe, those successful use cases to pursue sustainability via digital transformation, they try to differentiate themselves in the market by doing digital transformation, by pursuing sustainability. I will give you some examples very soon. So just a quick look at some recent academic literature. We have some empirical evidence. This is one article I saw published in MS Quarterly, which is one of our best academic journals in the field. And you do find the authors, they look into different strategies that companies are implementing green IT. Okay, so they use green IT for different purposes, and they categorize those strategies into two different types. The first type is called cost-focused green strategy. If you look at that, essentially it's all about how I can, kind of control my cost when using green IT. And of course, it seems to focus on lowering your cost and bring up your profitability, but eventually empirical evidence show that if you start minimizing your effort resources from the very beginning, you don't perform well financially, okay? The second type of strategy is called environment-focused green strategy. It's all about, how can I do things effectively, good for the environment when I use green IT. But surprisingly, you will also see these firms with such a strategy cannot perform very well because you will have to compromise your financial aspects a lot. So the first type, second type may not give you the best path until you have dual focus. You take into account your positive externalities by pursuing sustainability while actively thinking how I can create a competitive advantage by pursuing, cost leadership or, more importantly, differentiation. Okay, so I know it's a bit abstract, so I will get down to the ground with an example by taking blockchain use cases. So I don't know how many of you are familiar with blockchain, but essentially it's a data storage technology you can use. It might be the best one we have now in terms of immutability of the data, because once you add some data into blockchain, it's extremely difficult to change it, if not impossible. Okay, so as long as your platform and network of the blockchain is large enough, it will be extremely hard to change it. Just a very quick, blockchain 101. Essentially, blockchain is a distributed ledger system. Okay, so distributed means that we give everybody a full copy of all the blockchain data. Okay. Ledger means it's a database. You can store all kinds of data that you want. So if you think of the logic of applying blockchain, you will start realizing it's totally the opposite to the conventional ways then, how to keep your data safe, how to keep your data immutable. In the old days, we try to make it private in-house. We try to really restrict, data access right. We think that's the best way to not allow everyone to change our data, steal our data. But now with blockchain, actually, we find the best possible way to make your data immutable, trustworthy, is to give everyone a full copy. Of course, you need to protect privacy with a kind of public, private key mapping system. So you see all the data, but you don't know who owns the data. So that's the key idea. I will not go into too far there, but essentially this technology will store your data in a number of blocks, okay? Each of the block here will just store a piece of information. It could be anything. Could be transaction record. Could be, any business information you want to store. The first one is called Genesis block. It's a kind of special. That's the first. But since the second one, you have basically three things. You have a so-called hash, which is the answer, the solution to a mathematical puzzle. For what? For verifying, okay, the validity of your block before it can be added to your blockchain. So you have a hash, which is a kind of password, right, to add your block into the blockchain. And you have the data, of course. That's the meaningful part of your data. And you have the previous hash, okay? Because every block, except the first one, okay, has the previous hash. So they are kind of interconnected, right? So once I try to change the data, what will happen? So the mathematical game basically guarantee your hash calculation will be based on two things. The first thing is the data. Okay, if you change the data, you will have to change the hash. In order to make the hash work, the other thing will influence the hash will be the previous hash. It's also part of the input. Then you will change the previous hash in order to change the data, right? In that case, you will quickly see, okay, the previous hash of this block is different from the real previous hash. So you will break the blockchain, people will know, this is actually a fake one, unless you can change, all the subsequent blocks. I mean, with supercomputer, with AI, you can even do coding. You can develop agent without coding, right? It's not impossible. But what makes blockchain data really immutable is this decentralized consensus system. Because we give everyone a copy, right? We rely on the consensus from everybody on the platform. In a network, we have massive number of users, and we need to achieve consensus with at least 51% from the network. So if you are able to change one copy of the data, can you do that for 51% of all the copies? It's extremely difficult in practice if the blockchain network is large. Why do I want to mention that? Because of this, immutability of blockchain data, right? We actually can apply it to create a lot of business solutions. And something you're very familiar with will be the cryptocurrency, right? Bitcoin is just one of them, but we have more. Ethereum, we have at least 80 to 100 different cryptocurrencies nowadays. If you think of the application of blockchain, we shouldn't equal blockchain to cryptocurrency. It's just one application. More companies are trying to use that to create, for example, smart contract. Okay? So we can add those information, contract terms into blockchain. No one can change it. It could be automatically monitored and executed. So that makes the enforcement of your contract a bit transparent and also trustworthy. Another application is to improve the transparency of your supply chain, to make it traceable, to make it trustworthy. So with that in mind, I'm going to talk about some use cases quite quickly, applying blockchain in their digital transformation for sustainability. But something that I want to highlight here is, in all those use cases, they not only do something good for the environment or society, but also create a competitive advantage in the market. The first one is DBS. Okay. DBS has gone through, quite dramatic digital transformation for, more than 5 years already. If you look at what they have done, right, I will just highlight one example. So they applied a so-called green loan on blockchain platforms. So essentially, DBS tried to support their clients' sustainability initiatives. If you can basically use the loan to do something good for the environment, you get a lower interest if you ask for a loan from DBS. But the key challenge is, if you collect self-reporting information from your client as DBS, they will always try to justify, okay, I use it for green purposes to get a lower interest. How can we make this more trustworthy? DBS apply blockchain to create smart contracts. Every penny spent will be automatically monitored, stored there, no one can change it. So it's much more transparent and it's traceable. That actually make the information, trustworthy. That actually, as I think of it, the biggest opportunity for us to pursue cost leadership. Why? Because we waste too much time to verify the information due to the lack of trust when we receive information. So DBS did that, and actually, it almost redefined the banking and finance industry, making DBS one of the leaders, not only in Singapore, but also globally, to pursue sustainability. Okay, so it really gives DBS some competitiveness based on creative digital solution to pursue sustainability, right? It creates positive social image. It gives DBS a lot of competitive advantage. Another example, which is interesting, is BYD. So BYD, it's a major EV manufacturers in mainland China. And in recent years, the Chinese government started deregulating the EV market. A lot of foreign brands try to compete, and BYD are kind of knowing, Tesla, other companies, they're stronger in making EVs. So it tries to differentiate. How does it do? So it creates a blockchain-based green ecosystem. So it tried to collect, those sensor-based driving behaviors, emission released from the user behavior sensed by the car. So in EVs, it install a lot of sensors to automatically, collect the information about driving behavior and transfer this into the carbon credits. Every single user can check with a mobile app. And on this platform, they also host a large number of merchants. They can use those carbon credit to exchange with some, things like T-shirt, water bottles. But more importantly, it actually gives customers some quantified information. They use that to show it off on social media, and a lot of customers really like that. They attract a large number of young generation of customers because of that. They have more awareness of environmental issues. With regard to the social aspect, I want to mention this Chotai Folk effort by using blockchain to go against the so-called blood diamond issues, because a lot of diamond jewelries, Chotai Folk is one of the largest diamond jewelry manufacturers in the world. It's Hong Kong based, and a lot of materials, the diamond material, came from poor countries in Africa. Labor conditions was poor there. Sometimes they even use, child labor for lowering their cost. So if you're a responsible customer, you don't want to buy that. But if you visit any of the store, they will say, we don't sell blood diamond. So Chotai Folk actually create a blockchain-based mobile app to chase, all the information and store it in the blockchain. So it's trustworthy, it can charge 3% higher price because of that. So it really gives it, a competitive advantage that way. And Walmart is another example. Use blockchain to chase food safety issues along the supply chain by digitizing, the supply chain information, put it into blockchain, make it trustworthy. If you can really bring up the trust level, you can save a lot of time, effort, resources, and cost in business operation. So the efficiency gain is huge. Finally, I want to highlight, the complexity of achieving ambidexterity. If we think of cryptocurrency, as what I mentioned, as a notable blockchain applications, you will find, essentially it's a decentralized financial infrastructure to work around the banking system. Right? Everyone can record the transaction information, transaction data into blockchain, and then you are using cryptocurrency. So it helps us to achieve some SDGs from UN, Sustainability Development Goals, right? It creates some innovative financial infrastructure accessible to everybody, rather than make those expensive financial services only available to rich people, make them richer. So from social perspective, you may find, oh, this looks good. But if you think of the environmental aspect of sustainability, it may not be that good. You will find the verification, we call it mining, of just the Bitcoin as one of the many cryptocurrencies. It's bigger than the total energy consumption of a country. A lot of countries in Africa, they don't even have sufficient power to consume. Do we have to create some innovation like that? It's even greater than the total energy consumption of countries like Belgium. So it seems against another SDG about affordable, clean energy. So this is my last slide. I just want to use this triple bottom line framework to remind you, we will have to find a way, creative way, to achieve ambidexterity. And it's not easy, but with a lot of creativity, with a lot of effort, we might be able to get there, like a lot of companies that we just discussed. And it takes 3 to tango, because even within sustainability, you have both the environmental and social aspects. Okay? We don't want to solve one problem while creating another. Of course, those complexity among the 3 dimensions bring us, a lot of challenges to solve. But on the other hand, I also think, it brings you a lot of unique opportunities. If you try to pursue your digital transformation journey, bearing in mind how I can balance among 2 or 3 different goals here, we try to make our sustainability initiative sustainable by raising the profit. Otherwise, sooner or later, you will have to shut it down. And we try to make positive environmental and social impacts. I think, with a lot of creativity and efforts, you see some companies can achieve that. And it provides us unique challenges and opportunities. Okay, I will stop here. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, John. You gave a different kind of speech, but still very relevant.
I hope so.
Okay, Ken, I just have a first question that came to my mind when I hear about your sustainability talk. As a company, when I want to, if I want to measure, and I have to, right, measure and calculate the costs, the revenue, the profit, I can do so quite easily. It's quite standardized, and everyone agrees with the number. The question now, when it comes to sustainability, how do we measure and calculate sustainability? Because I want, otherwise, if I can't, then how do I know that I'm improving or even getting worse on the sustainability part?
Yeah, that's a good question, of course. There are some available matrices you can rely on, emission reduction. You can even quantify this with carbon credit, So there are some carbon, markets which can provide you some information in that regard. But in terms of the strategic value that I just mentioned, by pursuing sustainability as an opportunity, it will be more difficult to quantify because essentially the benefits will be manifested in either your revenue, if you can really lock in and attract more customers, or you cut the cost kind of indirectly. Yeah. So for the strategic value, I would say it's difficult. So it's more relying on how you can creatively think of the business value you generate. We mention value a lot of time. Kelly and Barb also mentioned that in the panel discussion. Value is hard to quantify, but it's essential for business decision. But we do have some specific matrices you can rely on as well.
Okay, that's good to know. By the way, I'm waiting for your questions, right? Okay, now the second question that came to my mind is because you mentioned about this dual focus, right? I think it's interesting. It's an interesting, psychological attempt, right, to look at sustainability as a different viewpoint. Yeah? So, this question is that the only critical success factor? If not, what are the other important success factors, right, for people to embark on this sustainability in addition to that?
That's a very good question as well. So I don't think it's the only successful factor. Actually, as I mentioned, it's just a starting point. But I think, changing your mindset to think sustainability more as an opportunity, how I may pursue this with new technology, is a good starting point of your journey. There are many other factors, what technology capabilities you have, what tools you have, the skills of your workforce, a lot of other factors that we just mentioned. If you also think of the business system, your business process and operation, the efficiency of that, all that will matter. So putting together, we are thinking of establishing an information system, relying on data by applying digital technologies. Whether it's competitive or not will be determined by all these factors. It's essentially about your capability of creating synergies across different factors. But I think starting the strategic thinking more based on, we can pursue sustainability in our digital transformation journey as an opportunity. We are willing to invest rather than minimizing the resource and effort input from the very beginning could be a good starting point.
Okay, good. And I finally have a question. Okay, any evidence that sustainability improves the valuation of companies?
Yeah, a lot. So if you look at CSR literature, right, sometimes, CSR is corporate social responsibility, or, some papers about ESG performance, you will see, at least in the financial market, right, so you will see positive market reaction if you provide any news to the market in terms of your sustainability initiatives. We do observe on average there is a positive market reaction. It means that investors think that your sustainability initiative is valuable and they try to reward by purchasing your stock, and then you observe positive reaction of your stock price. Yeah.
Okay.
We have empirical evidence.
Okay. So anyway, just a side comment on that, because we know that I guess in analytics and in stats, we know that correlation does mean causation, right? So if we see we invest in sustainability and the valuation rises, how do you know it's due to our sustainability?
Yeah,
and
that's a
something
good
else?
question. We are always struggling of identifying the causal effect. We do have a lot of techniques. For example, the evidence that I mentioned was primarily used the so-called event study methodology, which is quite popular. So we are kind of running repeated experiments or treatments based on a large number of companies, public firms, over a long time. So we have, I will not say 100% confidence, but quite reasonable confidence to say this positive market reaction, the cumulative abnormal return, could be attributed to your sustainability initiatives, because otherwise you will not see the effect again and again and again over time once you see any news about sustainability from any companies.
Okay, very good. So we have methodology to validate that. Okay, so if you want to learn about that, you can come and join our class. Okay. With that, let's give a round of applause to
Thank you very much.
And
Thank you, Prof. Dong. Please take a seat. Thank you.